Good day, I'm Andri, and I do welcome you to my essential philosophy readings for today. Our issue or theme subject will be courage and wisdom in Stoic philosophy. It is very well known that the larger concept of courage, which includes an ethical and ontological element, becomes immensely effective at the end of the ancient and at the beginning of the modern world, both in Stoicism and Neo-Stoicism. These are philosophical schools alongside others at that era, but both are much more than philosophical schools. They are in the way in which some of the most important and noblest figures in late antiquity and their followers in modern times have answered the problem of existence and conquered the anxieties of fate, of destiny, of fatum, and our contingency, finality, or death. Stoicism is, in that very sense, a basic religious attitude, whether it appears in its theistic, atheistic, or transtheistic forms. Stoic courage is not an invention of the Stoic philosophers. They only gave it some classical expression in rational terms, but its roots go far back to mythological times, to stories, legends of heroic deeds, words of early wisdom, poetry, tragedy, and to centuries of philosophy preceding the rise of Stoicism. One very unfortunate event gave the Stoics' courage lasting power, and that was the death of Socrates. That became for the whole ancient world both a fact and a symbol. It showed the human situation in the face of the fate and in the face of death. It showed a courage which could affirm life itself because it could affirm death as such. And it brought a very profound change in the traditional meaning of courage that we know. In Socrates, the heroic courage of the past was made rational and universal. A democratic idea of courage was created as against the aristocratic idea of it. Soldierly fortitude was transcended by the courage of wisdom. In this form, it gave some kind of philosophical, let's say, consolation to many people in all sections of the ancient world throughout a period of catastrophes and essential transformations. The description of Stoic courage by a great man like Seneca shows the interdependence of the fear, passions, sentiments, fear of death, and the fear of life, as well as the interdependence of the courage to die and the courage to live, to persist, to go on. Seneca points to those who do not want to live and do not know how to die. Seneca speaks of libido moriendi, the exact Latin phrase or term for Freud's death instinct. He tells of people who feel life as meaningless, as vacuumed, as superfluous, and who, as in the book of Ecclesiastes, say, I really cannot do anything new. I really cannot do or see anything new. Every day is the same, and the sun is always the same, rising in the same way. And this very sentence, according to Seneca, is a consequence of the acceptance of pleasure, of the pleasure principle, or as he calls it, anticipating a recent phrase, the good time attitude, which he finds especially in the younger generation. As in Freud, the death instinct is the negative side of the ever unsatisfied drives of the libido. So according to Seneca, the acceptance of the pleasure principle necessarily leads to disgust and despair about life itself. But Seneca knew very well, as much as Freud did, that the inability to affirm life does not imply the ability to affirm death, finality, our contingency, the anxiety of faith and the anxiety of death controls the lives, even of those who have lost their will to live. This shows that the Stoic recommendation, for example, of one of the most important and biggest philosophical problems, and that is the problem of suicide, is not directed to those who are conquered by life, but to those who have conquered life and are able both to live and to die and can choose freely between them. Suicide as an escape dictated by fear contradicts the Stoic courage to be. Now we shall see how. The Stoic courage is, in the ontological as well as the moral sense, courage to be, courage to live, courage to persist, courage to go on no matter what. It is based on the control of reason in man. I do highlight the control of reason in man. But reason is not in either the old or the new Stoic what it is in contemporary terminology. There are essential differences of how we are getting to understand reason back then and how we are understanding reason now. Reason in the Stoic sense is not the power of reasoning or arguing on the basis of our experience and with the tools of ordinary formal logic or mathematical logic elements. Reason for the Stoics is the logos, the meaningful structure of reality as a whole and of the human mind in particular. If there is, says Seneca, no other attribute which belongs to man as man except his reason, then reason will be his one good, worth all of the rest put together. This means that reason is man's true or essential nature, in comparison with which everything else, according to man and related to man, is accidental, is secondary. The courage to be, to live, is the courage to affirm one's own reasonable nature over against what is accidental in people. It is obvious that reason in this sense points to the person in his center and includes all of his mental functions. Reasoning as a limited cognitive function detached from the personal center never could create courage, according to Stoic philosophy. One cannot remove anxiety by arguing it away. This is not a recent psychoanalytical discovery. The Stoics, while glorifying human reason, knew it as well. They knew that anxiety can be overcome only through the power of universal reason which prevails in the wise man over desires and over fears and over passions and sentiments. Stoic courage presupposes the surrender of the personal center to the logos of being. It is participation in the divine power of reason itself, transcending the realm of passions and the realm of anxieties. The courage to be is the courage to affirm our own rational nature, in spite of everything in us that conflicts with its union with the rational nature of being itself. Now, what conflicts with the courage of wisdom is desires and fears and anxieties and sentiments and passions. The Stoics developed a profound and very powerful doctrine of anxiety, which also reminds us of recent analysis. They discovered that the object of fear is not us, is fear itself. Nothing, says Seneca, is terrible in things except fear itself. And Epictetus says, for it is not death or hardship that is a fearful thing, but the fear of death and hardship. Our anxiety puts frightening masks over all men and things that surround us. If we strip them and strip these masks, and their own countenance what will be appears, what will be the fear they produce will certainly disappear. This is true even of death and contingency and our finality, since every day we die. Every day a little of our life is taken away from us. The final hour, when we cease to exist, does not of itself bring death. It merely completes the death process. The horrors connected with it are a matter of our own imagination. They vanish when the mask is taken from the image that we have on death and contingency. It is our uncontrolled desires that create these morbid masks and put them over men and things that surround us. Freud's theory on the libido is anticipated by Seneca, but in a much larger context. He distinguishes between natural desires, which are limited, and those which spring from false opinions and as such are unlimited. Desire, as such, is not unlimited. In undistorted nature, it is limited by objective needs and is therefore capable of satisfaction. But man's distorted imagination transcends the objective needs and with them any possible satisfaction. And where are we now? And this, not the desire as such, produces some kind of unwise tendency toward death and contingency. The affirmation of one's essential being in spite of desires and anxieties creates joy. Lucilius is exhorted by Seneca to make it his business to learn how to feel joy. It is not the joy of fulfilled desires to which he refers, for a real joy is a very serious, he says, severe matter. It is the happiness of a soul which is lifted above every circumstance, every life condition. Joy